Now let's begin. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital corridor buzzed overhead as Everett Armstrong walked with measured steps, his leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. At 42, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd built his own success from nothing. His dark hair showed traces of gray at the temples, and his sharp blue eyes missed little. He was here visiting Mrs. Chun, an elderly neighbor who'd broken her hip, bringing her the mystery novel she loved. "You're too kind, Everett," Mrs. Chun said, her wrinkled hand patting his. "Your boy Justin has your good heart." Everett smiled. "He's at Northwestern now, studying computer science. Top of his class." Pride colored his voice. Justin was everything to him. Smart, ambitious, and untainted by the cynicism that sometimes crept into Everett's view of the world. He'd raised Justin largely alone after his first wife, Sarah, died of cancer when the boy was only 7. Those had been brutal years, balancing his work as a forensic accountant with single fatherhood. But they'd grown close, developing the kind of bond that only shared hardship could forge. He'd met Diane Mayer 3 years ago at a charity gala. She was beautiful, elegant, and seemed genuinely interested in both him and Justin. The whirlwind romance had felt like a second chance at happiness. They'd married within a year. Driving home to his house in Lincoln Park, Everett reflected on how his life had stabilized. His forensic accounting firm was thriving. He specialized in uncovering financial crimes, helping law enforcement and corporations trace money through Byzantine networks of shell companies and offshore accounts. The work suited his analytical mind and gave him satisfaction beyond the substantial income it provided. The house was dark when he arrived. Diane was visiting her mother in Naperville, or so she'd said. Everett loosened his tie and poured himself a bourbon, settling into his study. This was his sanctuary, lined with books on criminology, finance, and his secret pleasure, vintage crime novels. He appreciated the elegant simplicity of noir detective stories, where justice, though delayed, was inevitable. His phone showed a text from Justin. "Call you tomorrow, Dad. Need to talk about something." Everett frowned slightly. Justin's tone, even in text, seemed off. But it was late, past 11. He'd call his son in the morning. He was deep in a dreamless sleep when his phone shattered the silence. The screen showed 3:17 a.m. Justin's name glowed in the darkness. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Everett's voice was thick with sleep. "Dad." Justin's voice was barely a whisper, tight with fear. "Dad, listen to me carefully. Don't trust Mom's family. The Mayers. They're planning something. I found." Static crackled through the line. "Justin? Justin, what's wrong? Where are you?" "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. Uncle Howard, he's not. They're all." The fear in his son's voice sent ice through Everett's veins. "Son, talk to me. What did you find?" "The files." "Dad, the files I sent you. Check your encrypted email. The one we set up for." Justin's breathing was ragged now, panicked. "Oh God, someone's coming." "Dad, don't trust them. Don't trust any of." The line went dead. "Justin. Justin." Everett was on his feet, his heart hammering. He called back immediately. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He tried Justin's roommate, his friends, anyone who might know where he was. No one answered at this hour. Everett's mind raced through possibilities, his professional instincts warring with paternal terror. He opened his laptop with shaking hands and logged into the encrypted email account he'd set up for Justin, a precaution from his forensic accounting work, teaching his son about digital security. There, sent at 2:47 a.m., was an email from Justin with a large attachment. The subject line read, "Dad, insurance. If anything happens to me." Everett's blood ran cold. He downloaded the file. It was locked with a password. He tried Justin's usual combinations. Nothing worked. He called the Evanston police, where Northwestern was located. They took his information but said without evidence of a crime, they couldn't do much until morning. They'd send a patrol car to Justin's apartment. Everett paced his study, still calling Justin's phone every few minutes. The sky began to lighten outside his window. He'd called Diane twice, but she hadn't answered either. Maybe her phone was off. At 7:30 a.m., his doorbell rang. Everett yanked the door open, hoping against hope it was Justin. Instead, Howard Mayer stood on his doorstep. Diane's older brother was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with slicked back hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He worked in real estate, or so he claimed, though Everett had always found him vague about the details. Everett. Howard's voice was somber, but something in his expression made Everett's stomach drop. Can I come in? Where's Justin? What happened? Howard stepped inside, his face arranged in an expression of sympathy that looked rehearsed. I'm so sorry, Everett. There's been an accident. Last night, around 3 in the morning. Justin's car went off the road in Evanston, near campus. He paused, placing a heavy hand on Everett's shoulder. He didn't survive. I'm so sorry. The world tilted. Everett gripped the doorframe, his knuckles white. What? No. I just talked to him. At 3. He called me. The accident happened just after 3, Howard said smoothly. Maybe he called while driving. Lost control. Hit a tree. The impact was instant, Everett. He didn't suffer. Every instinct Everett had developed over 20 years of uncovering lies and fraud screamed at him. Howard was lying. The timeline didn't match. The convenient explanation. The slightly too perfect sympathy. But grief and shock threatened to overwhelm his analytical mind. His son. His boy. I need to see him. Which hospital? The body was taken to the Cook County Medical Examiner's office. Diane is on her way there now. She wanted me to come tell you in person. To be here for you. I need to go there. Now. Everett grabbed his keys. Of course. I'll drive you. You're in no state. I'll drive myself. Everett's voice was steel. He couldn't bear to be in a car with Howard Mayer right now. Couldn't trust himself not to ask the questions burning in his mind. As he drove toward the medical examiner's office, one hand on the wheel and the other repeatedly calling Justin's phone, Everett forced himself to think. If Howard was lying, and every fiber of his being said he was, then what really happened? Justin's warning echoed in his mind. Don't trust Mom's family. At a red light, he called Northwestern Hospital, the closest to campus. I'm inquiring about a patient, Justin Armstrong. He would have been brought in early this morning, car accident victim. Let me check, sir. A pause. I'm sorry, we have no patient by that name admitted this morning. He called Evanston Hospital. Same response. He called St. Francis in Evanston. Nothing. His hands tightened on the wheel. Howard had said the body went straight to the medical examiner. But emergency services always transported victims to the nearest hospital first, even if they were deceased, for official pronouncement and documentation. There had been no accident, which meant Justin's warning was real, which meant his son was either in terrible danger, or they'd already killed him. Everett pulled over, his breathing ragged. He forced down the grief, trying to choke him. Later. He could break later. Right now, he needed to think like a forensic accountant, not a father. He needed to find the truth. He opened his phone and texted Howard, taking some time. Need to be alone. Tell Diane I'll call her later. Then he turned his car around and drove to his office. The conference room at Armstrong Forensic Solutions was empty this early on a Saturday. Everett locked himself in and opened his laptop again, focusing on that encrypted file from Justin. His son had been studying computer science, but he'd also helped Everett on some of his cases, learning about financial investigation. What would Justin use as a password for something this important? He tried combinations of dates, names, inside jokes. Nothing. Then he remembered. When Sarah was dying, she'd made Everett promise to always protect Justin. Her last words to their son had been in Italian, her grandmother's language. Sii forte, cucciolo. Be strong, little cub. Everett typed, Sia forte cucciolo. The file opened. Inside were dozens of documents. Bank statements, corporate filings, wire transfer records, and photographs, surveillance photos of Howard Mayer meeting with various people in parking garages, restaurants, hotel lobbies. As Everett began reading, a picture emerged that made his blood run cold. The Mayer family wasn't what they seemed. Howard's real estate business was a front. According to Justin's notes, the Mayers had been running a sophisticated long-con operation for over a decade. They targeted wealthy individuals, specifically men who were recently widowed or divorced with significant assets. The pattern was always the same. One of the Mayer women would romance the mark. They'd marry quickly. Then, through various means, staged accidents, suicides, sudden illnesses, the husband would die, and his assets would flow to his widow, who would eventually funnel the money to Howard. Everett's vision blurred with rage. He scrolled through the documents. There were at least 7 previous victims. 7 men who'd married into the Mayer family and died within 2 to 5 years. And there, In a folder labeled Current Operation, he found a dossier on himself. Photographs of him at the charity gala where he'd met Diane. Notes on his financial status, his assets, his business. A timeline. Marriage month 1 to 12. Establish trust. Year 2. Isolate from outside relationships. Year 3. Adjust insurance policies. Year 3 to 4. Execute. They were in year 3. Everett's hands trembled as he read Justin's final note. Dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to be sure. I've been investigating since I found some of these documents in Uncle Howard's office last Christmas. I made copies, tracked the money. They're planning to kill you. Probably make it look like suicide or an accident. I was going to come home this weekend to show you everything in person, but I think they know I found out. Howard's been watching me. Dad, I'm scared. I'm going to Uncle Terry. He's the only one who got away. Terry Drake. The name hit Everett like a punch. Diane had mentioned an uncle briefly, years ago. He'd left the family after some falling out, moved out west. She'd said they didn't speak to him anymore. Everett had never thought to investigate his wife's family. He'd been too consumed by his feelings for Diane, too grateful for a second chance at happiness, too trusting. He'd been a fool, but his son had been smarter, braver. And now Justin was either dead or in hiding, and Everett had to find out which. He pulled up a database he used for skip tracing, entering Terry Drake's name along with the limited information he had. It took an hour of searching, but he finally found an address in Bozeman, Montana. Terry Drake, age 54, lived on a small ranch outside the city. Everett booked the next flight to Bozeman, then began methodically photographing every page of Justin's file with his phone. He uploaded the photos to 3 different encrypted cloud services, then sent the login credentials to his own attorney, Luther Lyons, with instructions to open them if anything happened to him. Only then did he return Diane's calls. Everett, where are you? Her voice was thick with tears, real or manufactured. He couldn't tell anymore. Howard told me about Justin. I'm at Mother's. Please come. We need to be together. I can't, Diane. I need time. I'm going away for a few days. What? Everett, our son just died. You can't. I'll call you. He hung up. His phone immediately rang again. Howard. Everett let it go to voicemail, then powered off the device entirely. He removed the battery and left the phone in his office safe. At a convenience store, he bought a burner phone with cash. Then he went home, packed a bag, and drove to O'Hare International Airport. As he sat in the terminal waiting for his flight, Everett allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he'd learned. For 3 years, he'd shared his bed with a woman who was planning his murder. He'd welcomed her family into his home, his life. They'd smiled at him over Thanksgiving dinner while plotting to steal everything he'd built. And Justin had known, had tried to protect him, had risked his own life to gather the evidence. If his son was dead, Everett would make them pay in ways they couldn't imagine. But first, he had to know. He had to find Terry Drake and learn the truth. The ranch house sat at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by Montana wilderness. Mountains loomed in the distance under a sky so vast it made Chicago feel claustrophobic. Everett had rented a car in Bozeman and driven the 40 minutes to Terry Drake's property, his nerves wound tight. He knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. The door opened to reveal a weathered man with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that held the wariness of someone who'd seen too much. He held a shotgun loosely in his right hand. Terry Drake. Who's asking? My name is Everett Armstrong. I'm married to Diane Mayer. Or I was. I'm not sure anymore. Everett met the man's gaze steadily. My son Justin came to you. Or was planning to. I need to know if he made it. Something shifted in Terry's expression. He lowered the shotgun. You better come in. The interior of the house was sparse but comfortable, filled with books and hunting trophies. Terry gestured to a chair and sat across from Everett, studying him. How did you find me? My son left me files. Evidence about the Mayer family. What they've been doing. Terry's jaw tightened. So you know. Some of it. Not all. My son is missing. Howard claims he died in a car accident, but there was no accident. I need to know if he came here. He's here. Terry's words hit Everett like a shock of electricity. He's alive. He showed up 2 days ago, drove straight through from Chicago. He was being followed, but he lost them in Wyoming. Everett's vision swam. He's alive? He's really alive. He's sleeping right now. The kid was exhausted, terrified. But yeah, he's safe. Everett dropped his face into his hands. The relief, so overwhelming he couldn't speak. His son was alive. Everything else could be dealt with, but Justin was alive. I need to see him. Soon. Let him rest a bit longer. He's been through hell. Terry poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle on the shelf. But first, you and I need to talk. Because if you're here, that means they've already made their move. And you need to understand exactly what you're up against. Everett took the whiskey, his hands steadier now that he knew his son was safe. Tell me everything. Terry settled back in his chair, his eyes distant. I married into the Mayer family 30 years ago. Fell hard for a woman named Patty Mayer, Howard's sister. Beautiful, charming, everything I thought I wanted. We had a daughter together, Courtney. He paused, pain flickering across his face. Took me 5 years to realize what they were doing. The Mayers aren't just con artists, Everett. They're predators. They've been doing this for generations, always targeting men with money. The women marry them, the family bleeds them dry, then they dispose of the husband and move on. How many? Everett asked. That I know of. At least 20, going back to Howard's father. Probably more. They're good at covering their tracks, spreading out the deaths across different states, making each one look different. Car accidents, suicides, heart attacks, drownings. They've had medical examiners on payroll, cops, lawyers. They've built a network. How did you get out? I didn't, not at first. They tried to kill me. Made it look like a suicide attempt. I was supposed to hang myself in our garage. Terry's voice was flat, emotionless. But my daughter found me before I lost consciousness. She cut me down, called 911. She was only 8 years old. He refilled his glass. I woke up in the hospital, and I knew Patty had done something to me. I'd been drugged, but I couldn't prove it. So I played along. Went to therapy. Took my antidepressants. And I planned. What did you do? I liquidated everything I could without them noticing. Moved money into accounts they didn't know about. Then I took Courtney, and we ran. Disappeared in the middle of the night. Changed our names, started over. They looked for us, but I was careful. It's been 23 years. Your daughter. She's in Seattle now. Married. Has kids of her own. She doesn't talk to me much. What I put her through, running, always looking over our shoulder. Terry's voice cracked. But she's alive. She's safe. That's what matters. Everett absorbed this, his mind cataloging every detail. Why didn't you go to the police? With what evidence? I had nothing. And like I said, they have cops on the payroll. I tried once, anonymously. The detective who took my call, he was dead 2 weeks later. Boating accident. Terry's smile was bitter. I learned to keep my head down and my mouth shut. But Justin found evidence. Real evidence. Financial records, photographs. That kid is smarter than I ever was. And braver. He put himself at risk to protect you. Terry stood. Come on. Let's see if he's awake. They walked down a hallway to a back bedroom. Terry knocked softly, then opened the door. Justin sat on the bed, his laptop open, headphones on. When he saw Everett, his face crumpled. Dad. Everett crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled his son into his arms. Justin was shaking, and Everett realized he was too. They held each other, and Everett felt tears on his face that he didn't bother to wipe away. I'm sorry, Justin whispered. I should have told you sooner. I just wanted to be sure. You saved my life. You saved both our lives. Everett pulled back, gripping his son's shoulders. You did exactly right. Justin wiped his eyes. They know I took the files. Howard's been calling my roommate, my friends. They're looking for me. Let them look. You're safe here. Everett turned to Terry. How long can we stay? As long as you need. This place is off the grid. No paper trail connecting me to you or the Mayers. For the next several hours, the 3 of them sat around Terry's kitchen table, going through everything Justin had discovered. The younger Armstrong had been meticulous, documenting patterns, tracking money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. It started when I went to Uncle Howard's office last December, Justin explained. Remember? Diane asked me to pick up some documents for her while I was home for Christmas break. I remember. Everett had thought nothing of it at the time. I got there early, and Howard wasn't in yet. His assistant let me wait in his office. I was bored, and I noticed his computer was still logged in. I know I shouldn't have, but Justin looked guilty. I started poking around. Just curious. And I found a folder labeled Armstrong. What was in it? Everything about you. Your financial statements, your business records, your insurance policies. and a document called Timeline that laid out their whole plan. It spooked me, so I copied it to a flash drive. Then I started digging deeper. Justin pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. Look at this. These are the other men who married into the Mayer family in the last 15 years. 7 of them. All dead within 5 years of marriage. All of them wealthy. And look at what happened to their assets. He showed them a flow chart of money movements. In each case, the widow had inherited. Then gradually the money had been distributed to various Mayer family members through loans, business investments, and property transactions. They're good at making it look legitimate, Justin said. But if you track it all, the pattern is clear. They're a criminal enterprise disguised as a family. Terry leaned forward. Did you find anything about the deaths? How they did it? Some. They used different methods to avoid pattern detection. But there's one name that keeps appearing in the background of several cases. Justin pulled up another file. Dr. Angelo O'Neill. He signed off on at least 3 of the death certificates, always ruling natural causes or accident. And he's received significant payments from Mayer family accounts. A corrupt medical examiner, Everett said. That's how they get away with it. Not just him. There's also a private investigator named Willard Larkin who's on their payroll. And a lawyer, Muhammad Casey. They've built an entire support network. Everett felt cold fury building. The Mayers weren't just murderers. They were organized, professional, and they'd been doing this for decades with impunity. What was their plan for me, he asked. Justin hesitated. According to the timeline, they were going to stage a suicide this summer. Make it look like you were depressed about work stress. Maybe set up some fake financial problems first to establish motive. Diane would find you in your study. She'd inherit everything. The house, your business, your life insurance. And then I'd disappear too, Everett said quietly. Once the estate was settled. They might have let you live, Terry said. If you were properly broken. If they thought you'd never figure it out. But guys like us. He shook his head. We asked too many questions. We're too much of a liability. Everett stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Montana wilderness. Somewhere back in Chicago, Howard and Diane were probably wondering where he was, adjusting their plans, perhaps accelerating their timeline. They thought he was just another Mark. Another wealthy fool blinded by loneliness and desire for companionship. They had no idea who they were dealing with. For 2 decades, Everett had made his living following money trails, finding hidden assets, unraveling criminal schemes. He'd worked with the FBI, the IRS, corporate security divisions. He knew how to think like a criminal because he'd made a career of anticipating their moves. And now he was going to use every skill he'd developed, every resource he'd accumulated, every connection he'd made, to destroy the Mayer family. Dad, Justin's voice pulled him back. What are we going to do? Everett turned to face his son and Terry. His expression was calm, but his eyes were ice. We're going to do what they never expected. We're going to turn their own game against them. He sat back down. But we need to be smart about this. If we go to the police with what we have, they'll lawyer up, destroy evidence, maybe even use their connections to make the case disappear. We need more than financial records. We need confessions, Terry said. Evidence that can't be explained away. Exactly. Everett's mind was already working through possibilities. And we need to hit them where it hurts most. Their money, their network, their reputation. How? Justin asked. The same way I've taken down every other criminal organization I've investigated. We follow the money, we identify the weak links in their network, and we make them turn on each other. Everett pulled out his burner phone. But first, I need to make some calls. I have friends in federal law enforcement, people who owe me favors. People the Mayers can't touch. Over the next hour, he reached out to contacts carefully. Special Agent Lowell Murray at the FBI, who'd worked with him on a major fraud case 3 years ago. An IRS investigator named Adam Rogers. A federal prosecutor, Christoph Tompkins, who'd used Everett's testimony to win several high-profile cases. He explained the situation in broad strokes, sent encrypted copies of Justin's files, and asked for their help. Each one agreed to look into it quietly, to build a case without tipping off the Mayers or any local law enforcement who might be compromised. But official channels would take time. Investigations, warrants, grand juries. The wheels of justice turned slowly. Everett wanted something more immediate. Something personal. I'm going back to Chicago, he announced. What? Dad, they'll kill you. They'll try. But they think I'm broken up about your death. They think I'm vulnerable, grieving, not thinking clearly. That gives me an advantage. Everett's smile was predatory. I'm going to play the grieving father. I'm going to let them think their plan is working. And while they're congratulating themselves, I'm going to dismantle everything they've built. Terry studied him. You have a plan. The beginnings of one. But I'll need your help. Both of you. Anything. Justin said immediately. You need to stay here, stay safe. Keep digging through those files. Find every connection, every transaction, every person in their network. Build an airtight case. Everett turned to Terry. And I need you to be my safety net. If something goes wrong, if I disappear or they make a move against me, you get everything we have to the FBI. Done. There's one more thing. Everett pulled up a file on his phone. The mayors have assets. Lots of them, hidden in various places. I want to identify all of them. Properties, accounts, investments. Everything. Why? Justin asked. Because money is their power. It's how they buy cooperation, silence, protection. Take away their money, and they're just murderers without resources. Everett's voice was hard. I'm not just going to send them to prison. I'm going to destroy them financially. I'm going to take everything they've stolen and make sure they lose it all. Revenge, Terry said quietly. Justice, Everett corrected. For all the men they've killed. For all the families they've destroyed. They've been getting away with this for decades. That ends now. As the sun set over the Montana mountains, Everett began to formulate his plan. It would be dangerous. It would require him to deceive people he'd thought he loved, to manipulate a family of skilled manipulators, to play a role while gathering evidence. But he'd been in his son's position once, helpless and afraid as cancer took his first wife. He knew what it meant to feel powerless against an implacable enemy. This time would be different. This time, he had the power. He had the knowledge. And he had the will to do whatever was necessary. The Mayer family had made their worst mistake when they underestimated Everett Armstrong. They were about to learn that mistake would cost them everything. The flight back to Chicago gave Everett time to refine his strategy. He'd left his rental car at the airport in Bozeman, wiped it clean of prints, and taken a series of connecting flights to obscure his trail. By the time he landed at O'Hare, it was late Monday evening, nearly 72 hours since Justin's warning call. He retrieved his phone from his office safe and powered it on. Immediately, it exploded with messages and voicemails. Diane, Howard, even Diane's mother, Eunice Mayer, all trying to reach him. He listened to a few. Diane's voice progressed from concerned to angry to worried again. Howard's messages had an edge to them, a careful probing. Everett, we're concerned about you. Call us back. We're family. We need to stick together in this difficult time. Family. The word tasted like poison now. Everett called Diane. She answered on the first ring. Everett. Thank God. Where have you been? I've been losing my mind with worry. I'm sorry. He made his voice rough, grief-stricken. It wasn't hard. The grief was real, just not for the reason she thought. I couldn't handle it. I drove north, to Wisconsin. Stayed in a motel. I needed to process. Oh, honey. I understand. But you can't run from this. We have to face it together. There are arrangements to make, people to notify. I know. I'm coming home now. I just landed. Landed? You flew somewhere. He'd slipped. But he recovered. I drove to Milwaukee, then flew to Madison to visit Sarah's grave. I needed to tell her about Justin. There was a pause. When Diane spoke again, her voice was softer. That's actually really sweet. I know how much she meant to you. She was good, Everett had to admit. Even knowing what he knew, he could almost believe the sympathy in her voice was genuine. I'll be home in an hour, he said. I'll be waiting. Howard and Mother want to come over, to support you. Not tonight. Tomorrow, maybe. Tonight, I just need to be with you. Another pause. Of course. I love you, Everett. I love you too. The lie came easily now. The house felt different when he walked through the door. Diane rushed to embrace him, and he let her, even returned it, playing his part. She looked perfect, just the right amount of disheveled, her eyes red from crying. Real or practiced? He couldn't tell anymore. I made some tea, she said, leading him to the kitchen. You must be exhausted. I am. He watched her pour, noting how her hands moved, whether she had access to the cup before giving it to him. Years of investigating had taught him to notice everything. The tea seemed clean. She drank from her own cup. Still, he only pretended to sip his. They sat in the living room, and Diane talked about the arrangements she'd started making. A memorial service, since there was no body to bury, another lie in the layers of lies. She'd contacted Justin's university, his friends. The medical examiner's office said there were some complications, she said carefully. With the identification. They want you to come in tomorrow, bring dental records if you have them. Complications? The fire. After the crash. It made visual identification difficult. Fire. That was new. They were adding details to the fabrication, making it more elaborate. Probably, so there would be an excuse for why there was no body to view, no remains to examine too closely. I'll bring whatever they need, Everett said, his voice hollow. Diane took his hand. I know this is impossibly hard, but we'll get through it. Together. How did you hear? About the accident. Howard called me that morning. He has a friend in the Evanston Police Department. They contacted him as next of kin because they couldn't reach you. Layers of lies, each one reinforcing the other. They'd thought this through, prepared their story. They'd probably been planning this specific scenario since before they even married him. I need to sleep, Everett said, standing abruptly. I can barely think straight. Of course. Diane rose too. I'll come to bed soon. I'm just going to clean up down here. Everett climbed the stairs to their bedroom, every step feeling surreal. This was his house, his bed, but it felt like enemy territory now. He locked the bathroom door before showering, checked the medicine cabinet to see if anything looked tampered with. Nothing obvious. But then, they wouldn't be obvious. They were professionals. When he emerged, Diane was in bed, waiting for him. He climbed in beside her, let her hold him, and pretended to fall asleep. He felt her breathing change after about 30 minutes, becoming deeper, more regular. Carefully, quietly, he slipped out of bed. In his study, he activated a sophisticated recording system he'd installed years ago for work purposes, his own paranoia paying off. Tiny cameras and microphones concealed throughout the first floor, all feeding to encrypted storage. If Diane or Howard or anyone else said anything incriminating in his house, he'd have it on record. Then he opened his laptop and began the next phase of his plan. First, he transferred half his liquid assets to new accounts in his name only, at banks the mayors wouldn't know about. Not enough to raise immediate alarm. They'd expect some financial activity after a death in the family, but enough to protect himself if they tried to drain his accounts. Second, he changed his beneficiaries on his life insurance policies. Instead of Diane, everything now went to a trust he'd established for Justin years ago, with Terry Drake as trustee. It would take a few days to process, but it would be done. Third, he sent encrypted messages to Lowell Murray at the FBI and the others, updating them on the situation. He attached files from Justin's research and requested expedited investigation into Dr. Angelo O'Neill, Willard Larkin, and Muhammad Casey. Finally, he began his own deep dive into the Mayer family finances. Justin had found the surface layer, but Everett had access to databases and tools his son didn't. He started tracing shell corporations, following money trails, identifying properties. What he found made his blood boil. The Mayers had accumulated wealth over decades of murder. Conservatively, he estimated they had assets worth $40 to $50 million, spread across real estate, investments, and offshore accounts. Blood money, every dollar of it. But wealth meant vulnerability. It meant assets that could be seized, accounts that could be frozen, properties that could be claimed. It meant they had something to lose. Everett worked until dawn, building a financial map of everything the Mayers owned or controlled. Then he compiled a list of their known associates, the corrupt officials, the paid-off professionals, the network that enabled their crimes. Everyone had a breaking point. Everyone had something they feared losing. He would find those breaking points and exploit them ruthlessly. As the sun rose over Chicago, Everett heard Diane stirring upstairs. He closed his laptop, erased his browsing history, and went to make coffee, slipping back into his role as the grieving father. Howard arrived at 10, bringing Eunice Mayer with him. Diane's mother was a small, elegant woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a warm smile. She embraced Everett with practiced sympathy. "My dear boy, this is such a tragedy. We're here for you, whatever you need." They sat in the living room, and Howard began discussing practical matters. The memorial service, notification of Justin's friends and professors, legal issues with the estate. Justin was over 18, so his assets would normally transfer directly, Howard said. But given the circumstances, there may be complications. I can recommend a good probate attorney. I have my own attorney, Everett said quietly. Of course. I just meant to make things easier for you. Less to think about. Everett watched Howard's face, looking for tells. The man was smooth, practiced, but there, just a flicker around the eyes when Everett mentioned his own attorney. Concern. They'd wanted to control that process, guide it in a direction that benefited them. I appreciate it. But Luther has handled my affairs for years. I trust him. Understood. Howard smiled. We just want to help however we can. Eunice patted Everett's hand. You're family now, and family takes care of each other. The irony was so thick Everett almost laughed. Family. These people had probably killed more of their own family members than most serial killers killed strangers. There's one thing, Everett said, deciding to push a button. The medical examiner mentioned complications with identification because of the fire. But I called the Evanston Fire Department yesterday, and they said there were no vehicle fires reported that night. The room went very still. Diane's face remained concerned, but her body language shifted subtly. Howard's smile never wavered, but his eyes went flat. I must have misunderstood, Diane said quickly. Maybe the fire was minor, not worth reporting. Or maybe it was the next town over. Everything's been such a blur. Maybe, Everett said. I'm sure the ME's office will have accurate records. I'm going there this afternoon. We'll come with you, Howard offered. No, I need to do this alone. He stood, effectively ending the conversation. I appreciate you coming by, but I need some time to myself. They left, but Everett noticed Howard and Diane exchange a look on the way out. Worry. Calculation. Good. Let them worry. Let them wonder if he suspected something. As soon as they were gone, Everett went to his study and reviewed the morning's recording. There, a brief moment when he'd been in the kitchen and they'd thought they were alone. Eunice, whispering to Howard, he's asking questions. Howard's response, it's fine. Grief does that. He'll settle down. Eunice, what if he doesn't? Howard, then we accelerate the timeline. Don't worry, Mother. I've handled worse than this. Everett saved the file, backed it up to 3 locations, and sent a copy to the FBI. They were getting nervous, which meant they might make mistakes. His phone rang. Luther Lyons, his attorney. Everett, I got your email. Are you sure about these changes to your estate planning? Absolutely. Can you execute them this week? Yes, but is everything all right? These are significant changes, especially removing your wife as beneficiary. Everything's fine. Just some precautions. Can you also prepare a new will for me? I'll send you the details. Of course. After hanging up, Everett sent Luther a draft that left everything to Justin, with Terry Drake as executor. He also included instructions. If Everett died under suspicious circumstances, Luther was to immediately contact the FBI and provide them with all the evidence Everett had compiled. Insurance policies arranged. Evidence distributed. Safety nets in place. Now came the dangerous part. Everett had one advantage. The mayors thought Justin was dead. They didn't know their timeline had been exposed. They thought they had time to work on Everett, to position him for whatever accident they were planning. But they were also getting nervous. Howard's comment about accelerating the timeline suggested they might move faster than originally planned, which meant Everett had to move even faster. He made another call, this time to an old contact from his early days investigating organized crime, Rogelio Kinney, a private investigator with a flexible moral code and an impressive network of informants. Rogelio, I need information, and I need it quietly. Everett Armstrong. Haven't heard from you in years. What do you need? Everything you can find on a man named Willard Larkin. He's a PI, probably has a criminal record, works for some unsavory clients. I need to know who he's afraid of, what he's hiding, where his pressure points are. This legal? Does it matter? Rogelio laughed. Not particularly. Give me 48 hours. Next, Everett researched Dr. Angelo O'Neill. The medical examiner had been signing fraudulent death certificates for the mayors for years, which meant he was either being paid extremely well or they had leverage on him. Everett pulled the doctor's professional history, looking for anomalies. There, 3 years ago, O'Neill had faced a malpractice lawsuit that was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. The plaintiff's attorney was Mohammed Casey, the lawyer connected to the mayors. Interesting. So the mayors had helped O'Neill with a legal problem, and now he was in their pocket. Everett dug deeper into that malpractice case, pulling court records and news articles. A patient had died on O'Neill's table during a routine surgery, and the family had sued for negligence. The case had been damning. Evidence suggested O'Neill had been intoxicated during the procedure. But the evidence had mysteriously disappeared before trial, and the family had settled for a fraction of what they might have won. The Mayers had bought O'Neill's freedom and his loyalty, which meant O'Neill had committed at least one crime they could prove, falsifying a death certificate. With the right pressure, he might turn on them. Everett compiled all of this information into a dossier and sent it to Special Agent Murray. Then he turned his attention to the properties. Justin's research had identified several real estate holdings in the Mayer name: a commercial building in Des Plaines, a vacation home in Lake Geneva, an apartment complex in Aurora. But Everett suspected there were more, hidden behind corporate names. He spent hours tracing property records, looking for patterns. A limited liability company called Midwestern Holdings LLC owned several properties in the Chicago area. The registered agent was Muhammad Casey, the Mayer family lawyer. Bingo! Everett pulled records on every property Midwestern Holdings owned. 10 buildings total, worth an estimated $15 million. Rental income from these properties likely provided a significant portion of the Mayer family's cash flow. What would happen if that cash flow suddenly stopped? Everett began researching each property, looking for violations, building code issues, tax delinquencies, environmental problems. He found plenty. The Mayers had been cutting corners, ignoring maintenance, maximizing profits at the expense of tenant safety. He compiled another report, this one detailing every violation he could find, and prepared to send it to the appropriate city and county authorities. But not yet. Timing was crucial. Over the next 3 days, Everett played his role perfectly. He met with the medical examiner, who insisted Justin's remains were too badly burned for viewing, exactly as predicted. He planned a memorial service with Diane. He accepted condolences from friends and colleagues, all while smiling on the inside at the elaborate fiction being maintained. And every night, after Diane fell asleep, he worked. Rogelio called back with information on Willard Larkin. The PI had a gambling problem, deep in debt to some dangerous people. The Mayers were likely using that debt as leverage, paying him enough to stay afloat, but keeping him dependent. He's scared, Rogelio reported. Not of the Mayers, but of the people he owes money to. East Coast guys, real nasty types. He's about 6 months behind on payments. How much does he owe? $250,000, give or take. An idea began to form in Everett's mind. Thanks, Rogelio. I might have another job for you soon. Anytime, my friend. Everett also heard back from Special Agent Murray at the FBI. The investigation into the Mayers was officially open. They were looking into the previous deaths, interviewing family members of the victims, examining financial records. But as Everett had expected, it would take months to build a prosecutable case. The Mayers had been careful, and the crimes were spread across multiple jurisdictions and years. We'll get them, Murray promised. But you need to be patient and safe. If they suspect you're cooperating with us, I know the risks. Just keep building the case. Everett, I'm serious. These people have killed multiple times. Don't do anything stupid. I won't. I just want to see justice done. He hung up, knowing Murray didn't believe him. The agent knew Everett too well. Knew he wouldn't just sit back and wait while the legal system slowly ground toward justice. Justin called daily from Montana, frustrated by his exile, but understanding its necessity. Terry was teaching him to shoot, to hunt, to survive off the grid if necessary. Your kid's a quick learner, Terry reported. Smart as hell. Takes after his old man. Keep him safe, Everett said. That's all that matters. But he knew Justin wouldn't stay hidden forever. His son had his mother's courage and his father's stubbornness. Sooner or later, he'd want to come back and face the Mayers himself. Everett needed to end this before that happened. The memorial service was held on Saturday, a week after Justin's supposed death. Over 100 people attended, Justin's friends from high school and college, Everett's colleagues, neighbors. The Mayer family turned out in force, playing their parts beautifully. Howard gave a moving eulogy about his nephew, talking about Justin's bright future cut tragically short. Diane cried genuine-looking tears. Even Eunice dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Everett stood at the front of the room, accepting condolences, and plotted their destruction. After the service, there was a reception at the house. The place filled with people, and Everett moved through the crowd in a daze. Partly genuine grief for the elaborate lie being told about his son, partly calculated performance. He noticed Howard slip away to take a phone call, stepping into Everett's study. Everett followed casually a few minutes later, lingering just outside the cracked door. No, he's being cooperative. Hasn't asked any more questions. I think the service helped, gave him closure. Howard paused, listening. Yes, I think we can proceed as planned. Another month to make sure he's settled, then we execute. The suicide note is already drafted, we just need to wait for the right moment. Yes, I know. We've been patient this long. A few more weeks won't matter. Everett's hands clenched into fists. They were talking about his murder as casually as planning a vacation. He moved away before Howard finished the call, rejoining the reception. When Howard emerged, Everett caught his eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. Howard smiled and raised his own glass in return, both men playing their roles perfectly. But Everett's toast had a different meaning than Howard thought. It was a promise. I'm going to destroy you. And unlike the mayor's promises, Everett's would be kept. The next week, Everett began to execute his plan in earnest. First target, Willard Larkin, the private investigator in the mayor's pocket. Rogelio helped Everett set up a meeting, presenting himself as a potential client with a substantial payday. They met at a coffee shop in Schaumburg, neutral territory. Larkin was exactly what Everett expected, a rumpled man in his 50s with tired eyes and the look of someone who'd compromised himself one too many times. You said you needed investigative work? Larkin asked, stirring his coffee nervously. I need information on the Mayer family. Howard Mayer specifically. Larkin's face went white. I can't help you with that. Can't. Or won't. Everett leaned forward. I know you work for them, Willard. I know about the surveillance work you've done, the background checks, the dirt you've helped them dig up on their targets. I also know about your gambling debts. Who the hell are you? Someone who can make your problems go away. Or make them much, much worse. Everett slid a folder across the table. That's $250,000 in bearer bonds. Enough to pay off everyone you owe. In exchange, I want everything you have on the Mayer family. Every file, every recording, every piece of dirt you've helped them collect over the years. Larkin stared at the folder like it might explode. They'll kill me. They'll never know it was you. And even if they did, you'll be somewhere they can't reach you. I can arrange that too. Or, Everett pulled out his phone and showed Larkin a photo of himself with 3 dangerous-looking men. I can tell these gentlemen exactly where to find you and how much you owe them. They seem very interested in collecting. The photo was fake, photoshopped, but Larkin didn't know that. The fear in his eyes was real. You're bluffing. Am I? Make a choice, Willard. Right now? Work with me and start over somewhere safe and debt-free. Or take your chances with the mayors and the people you owe money to. Larkin's hands shook as he reached for the folder. I need guarantees. You have my word. And if that's not enough, you have the bonds right in front of you. Take them now, and tomorrow I want every file you have. After a long moment, Larkin nodded. Tomorrow. But I picked the place. Fine. Text me the location. Everett walked out of the coffee shop, feeling a grim satisfaction. One piece of the Mayer network was about to fall. And with Larkin's files, he'd have documented evidence of their operations, surveillance photos, background checks on victims, maybe even recordings of incriminating conversations. The next day, Larkin delivered. He met Everett in a parking garage, handed over 3 thumb drives, and took the bonds. There's everything, Larkin said. 10 years of work for the mayors. Photos, files, recordings. I kept copies of everything as insurance, but I never thought I'd actually use them. What's on here? The truth about what they do. How they select their targets. How they plan their approaches. How they cover their tracks afterward. It's all there. Any recordings of them discussing the murders? Larkin hesitated. 1. Howard talking to Mohammed Casey, the lawyer. They didn't know I was recording. Howard was complaining about one of the previous husbands being difficult to dispose of, and Casey suggested making it look like a suicide. They discussed methods. Everett felt a surge of triumph. That's exactly what I need. Listen, Larkin said. I know I'm not a good person. I knew what they were doing, and I helped them anyway because I needed the money. But I want you to know, I'm glad someone's finally stopping them. They're monsters. Yes, Everett agreed. They are. After Larkin left, Everett spent hours going through the files. It was a treasure trove of evidence. Documentation of how the mayors selected their victims, background checks on each target, surveillance photos showing Diane and other Mayer women engineering chance meetings with lonely, wealthy men. And then there were the recordings. Everett listened to Howard Meyer's voice discussing murder with the cold calculation of a businessman discussing quarterly earnings. He heard Muhammad Casey advising on how to structure estates to maximize the family's take. He heard Diane herself, in a conversation with her brother, laughing about how easy Everett had been to manipulate. He was so grateful for the attention, Diane's voice said on the recording. I barely had to try. 3 dates, and he was talking about forever. Men like him, widowers with money, they're desperate for someone to fill the void. It's almost sad how easy they are. Howard's response, just don't get attached. Remember what happened with Patty and Terry Drake. She let emotions cloud her judgment. I won't. This is business. Always has been. Everett stopped the recording, his hand trembling with rage. Every tender moment, every intimacy, every time she'd said she loved him, all lies. All calculated moves in a long game to steal his life. He took a breath, forced down the emotion, and continued working. He copied all the files and sent them to Special Agent Murray at the FBI, along with detailed annotations explaining what each piece of evidence showed. Then he prepared his next move. Dr. Angelo O'Neill, the corrupt medical examiner, was the linchpin of the mayor's operation. Without his willingness to falsify death certificates, they couldn't make murders look like natural causes or accidents. Everett pulled the information he'd gathered on O'Neill's malpractice case and compiled it into a new dossier. Then he had Rogelio deliver a message to the doctor, requesting a private meeting. O'Neill agreed, probably curious about who was asking. They met at a restaurant in Naperville, away from both their usual haunts. The doctor was a small, nervous man with thinning hair and darting eyes. He sat across from Everett, trying to appear confident and failing. Mr. Armstrong, I was surprised to receive your request. My condolences on your son. Were you the one who examined his body? Everett asked, his voice flat. O'Neill shifted uncomfortably. Yes. The identification was difficult because of the fire damage, but the dental records matched. I'm very sorry for your loss. Interesting. Because there was no body, was there? No accident. No fire. My son is alive and well in Montana. The color drained from O'Neill's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Everett slid a folder across the table. That's everything I have on your malpractice case from 3 years ago. The patient who died because you were drunk during surgery. The evidence that disappeared before trial. The settlement that should have ruined you, but somehow didn't. O'Neill's hands trembled as he opened the folder. The mayor's made that go away, Everett continued. And in exchange, you've been signing fraudulent death certificates for them ever since. At least 7 that I know of. Probably more. You can't prove. I can prove all of it. I have your signature on death certificates for bodies that don't exist or don't match the reported cause of death. I have financial records showing payments from Mayer family accounts to you. I have recordings of you discussing this arrangement with Howard Mayer. That last part was a bluff. Larkin's recordings didn't include O'Neill. But O'Neill didn't know that. The doctor slumped in his chair. What do you want? I want you to tell the truth. I want you to go to the FBI and confess everything. Every death certificate you falsified, every murder you helped cover up. In exchange, I'll help you get immunity. You'll lose your medical license, but you won't go to prison. If I do that, the mayors will kill me. If you don't, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. And I'll make sure everyone in that prison knows you helped serial killers get away with murder. How long do you think you'd survive? O'Neill's breath came in short gasps. You don't understand. Howard Mayer is connected. He has people in law enforcement, in the courts. If I testify against him, the FBI investigation is being handled by people he can't touch. Federal agents with no local ties. You'll be protected. Everett leaned forward. This is your chance to do the right thing. The only chance you'll get. Take it. Or I'll make sure the malpractice case gets reopened and every detail becomes public. I'll ruin you either way, doctor. This way, at least you have a chance at redemption. O'Neill sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. I'll do it. I'll talk to the FBI. Good. Everett handed him a card with Special Agent Murray's contact information. Call him today. And doctor, if you warn the mayors about this conversation, our deal is off. Understood. Understood. Everett left the restaurant feeling another piece slide into place. With O'Neill's testimony and Larkin's evidence, the FBI would have enough to arrest the mayors. But arrests weren't enough. He wanted them destroyed completely, financially, socially, every aspect of their lives dismantled. That night, he initiated the next phase. He filed complaints with the City of Chicago's building department about every mayor property that had code violations. He filed tax fraud reports with the IRS based on discrepancies he'd found in their corporate filings. He sent anonymous tips to investigative journalists about the pattern of deaths surrounding the Mayer family. Then he went after their money directly. Using information from Larkin's files, Everett identified the Mayers' main offshore accounts. They kept several $1 million in banks in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, money they'd stolen from their victims over the years. Everett had contacts in international banking enforcement, relationships built over 2 decades of tracking dirty money. He reached out to them now, providing evidence that the accounts contained proceeds of murder and fraud. Within 48 hours, the accounts were frozen pending investigation. He attacked from every angle simultaneously: legal, financial, regulatory. Each action was carefully calculated to apply maximum pressure while staying just within the bounds of legality. Well, mostly within the bounds. Some of what Everett was doing, the threats, the coercion, the aggressive financial maneuvers, existed in a gray area. He didn't care. The Mayers had murdered people. They tried to kill his son and were planning to kill him. Whatever moral lines he crossed to stop them seemed trivial in comparison. For days after his meeting with O'Neill, Special Agent Murray called. "We have enough," Murray said. "O'Neill's testimony, combined with the evidence from your son and the information from Larkin, gives us a solid RICO case. We're preparing arrest warrants for Howard Mayer, Eunice Mayer, Muhammad Casey, and several others. What about Diane? We're still building the case against her. She's been careful to keep herself insulated from the actual murders. But with O'Neill's testimony about her involvement in several of the death cover-ups, we should be able to include her in the indictment. When we execute the warrants on Friday morning, that gives us 3 days to coordinate with local law enforcement and secure the properties. Everett, I need you to act normal until then. Don't do anything that might tip them off. I understand. I mean it. We're this close. Don't screw it up by doing something reckless." Everett hung up and allowed himself a smile. Friday morning. In 3 days, the Mayers would be in handcuffs. But he wasn't done yet. Arresting them was just the beginning. That evening, Diane cooked dinner, a nice steak, his favorite wine. She'd been especially attentive lately, probably sensing that Everett was emerging from his grief and wanting to keep him emotionally dependent. "How are you feeling?" she asked, touching his hand across the table. "Better. Stronger." He met her eyes. "I've been thinking about the future. About us." Her face brightened. "Oh, I want to sell the business. Maybe travel for a while. We could go to Europe, Asia. Just get away from everything here that reminds me of Justin." This was part of the mayor's plan, he knew from Larkin's files. They wanted him to liquidate his business assets, making the eventual theft easier to execute. "That sounds wonderful," Diane said. "We could leave in the spring. Take a year, just explore the world together." "I'd like that." They talked about possible destinations, making plans that would never happen. Diane's enthusiasm seemed genuine, but Everett knew better now. She was counting the money in her head, calculating how much she'd steal. After dinner, Diane suggested they watch a movie. They settled on the couch, and she curled against him. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too," he replied, the words ashes in his mouth. His phone buzzed with a text from Justin. "Can't wait for this to be over." Everett texted back, "Soon. Friday. Stay safe." The next 3 days crawled past. Everett went through the motions: work meetings, dinners with Diane, a lunch with Howard where they discussed estate planning. All the while, he knew what was coming. Thursday night, he told Diane he had an early meeting Friday morning and would be leaving before she woke up. "Okay," she said, kissing him goodnight. "Drive safe." "I will." He lay in bed beside her, counting the hours until dawn. His go-bag was packed and hidden in his car: clothes, cash, burner phones, copies of all his evidence. Just in case. At 5 a.m., he slipped out of bed and dressed quietly. Diane didn't stir. He looked at her one last time. This woman he'd thought he loved. This woman who'd planned to murder him. Then he left the house and drove to a hotel in Rosemont, where he'd watched the arrests happen remotely. At 6:30 a.m., Special Agent Murray called. "We're moving in now." Everett turned on the news, watching from his hotel room as FBI agents descended on the Mayer family properties. Howard Mayer was arrested at his office. Eunice at her home, Muhammad Casey in his law office, and Diane. Diane was taken into custody at Everett's house, still in her bathrobe, her face shocked and furious as agents led her to a waiting car. The news anchors reported that federal authorities had broken up a long-running criminal enterprise involving multiple murders. Details were still emerging, but sources said the case involved a family that had been killing people for their money for decades. Everett watched it all with cold satisfaction. But he wasn't done. While the mayors sat in federal holding cells, Everett executed the final phase of his plan. He'd arranged for every piece of evidence about their crimes, the recordings, the financial documents, the surveillance photos, to be released to the media. By Friday afternoon, the story was everywhere. Cable news ran segments about the Black Widow family. Newspapers published exposés with photos of the victims, timelines of the murders, interviews with the families who'd lost loved ones. The mayors were destroyed in the court of public opinion before they ever set foot in an actual courtroom. And their money. Everett had arranged for every asset to be frozen, seized, or tied up in civil lawsuits from the victims' families. Properties were placed in receivership. Bank accounts were locked. Even the personal belongings in their homes were subject to asset forfeiture. By the time Everett was done, the mayors had nothing left but the prison jumpsuits they'd be wearing for the rest of their lives. 6 months later, Everett sat in a federal courtroom and watched as the Mayer family was sentenced. Howard Mayer, life in prison without parole for 8 counts of murder, plus additional charges of racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. Eunice Mayer, 40 years for conspiracy to commit murder and racketeering. Diane Armstrong, 30 years for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and accessory to murder. Muhammad Casey, 20 years for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Dr. Angelo O'Neill received immunity for his testimony, but lost his medical license permanently. Willard Larkin was never charged. Everett had kept his promise. As the sentences were read, Everett felt Justin's hand on his shoulder. His son had returned from Montana for the trial, testifying about what he'd discovered and how he'd been forced to flee. The mayors showed no emotion as they were led away. Diane looked at Everett once, her eyes full of hate and something else, respect, perhaps, or recognition that she'd been beaten at her own game. Everett met her gaze without flinching. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply watched as she was taken away to begin her 30-year sentence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Everett gave a brief statement, thanking the FBI and the judicial system. He didn't mention his own role in bringing down the mayors, though Murray had quietly acknowledged that without Everett's investigation, they might never have built a case. Driving home with Justin, Everett felt a weight lift that he'd been carrying for months. "It's over," Justin said. "Yes, it's over. What are you going to do now?" Everett had been thinking about that. "I'm selling the house. Too many bad memories. Maybe buy something smaller. And I think I'm going to shift my business focus, work more with law enforcement, help them investigate cases like this. There are probably other families like the mayors out there. Other people who need justice." "That sounds good, Dad. What about you?" "Back to school. Actually, I've been thinking." Justin smiled. "Maybe I could join your business. You taught me a lot about investigation. I'd like to learn more. We could be a team." Everett looked at his son, no longer the scared kid who'd called at 3 a.m., but a young man who'd shown remarkable courage and intelligence under pressure. "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Justin asked, "Did you ever love her?" "Diane." Everett considered the question. "I loved who I thought she was. But that person never really existed. She was always just playing a role." "I'm sorry. Don't be. She taught me an important lesson. Trust has to be earned, not given freely. And the people who truly deserve our trust prove it through their actions, not their words. Like Terry Drake. Like Terry. And like you, son. You saved my life. I won't forget that." Back at the house, soon to be his former house, Everett found a letter waiting for him. It was from Terry Drake. "Everett," it read, "I heard about the convictions. Congratulations. You did what I never could. You made them pay for everything they've done. My daughter called me after seeing the news. We talked for the first time in 5 years. She said she's proud of me for helping you and Justin. It's not much, but it's a start. Thank you for giving me a chance to do the right thing, even if it came 20 years too late. If you ever need anything, you know where to find me. Terry." Everett set the letter down, feeling a sense of completion. Justice had been served. The Mayers would spend the rest of their lives in prison, their reputations destroyed, their stolen wealth redistributed to their victims' families. Everett had lost his marriage, his trust and love, 3 years of his life to a lie. But he'd gained something too, the knowledge that he could fight back against monsters and win, that he could protect the people he loved, that even when the world seemed darkest, there was still justice to be found. And most importantly, he still had his son. Everything else was just noise. Justin called him from the kitchen. "Dad, I'm making dinner. Your favorite, Mom's recipe. Sarah's, I mean." Everett smiled. "I'll be right there." He took one last look around the house he'd shared with Diane, then closed that chapter of his life and walked toward the kitchen, toward his son, toward the future. Behind him, the past crumbled to dust. Ahead, a new beginning waited. And Everett Armstrong, who had faced down serial killers and won, was ready for whatever came next. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.